We don't cater to the poor. Those words cut like a knife through the gleaming lobby of the Mitchell Grand Hotel. Emily Harper stood frozen for a moment, her stained jeans and old hat making her invisible in a room filled with crystal chandeliers and polished marble. She had been humiliated and insulted in the most brutal way by staff who judged her based on her attire. What those staff were about to experience will surprise you. Ask yourself, have you ever felt inferior because you didn't fit someone else's idea of worth? Like Emily, many of us carry a spark of light behind our humble ways, but sometimes the world tries to dim that light. Before we go any further, ask yourself, what would you do if you were judged and cast aside when you most deserved it? Join me as we explore the story of Emily, a simple woman who persevered in the face of cruelty and the change she created despite all odds. Emily Harper adjusted the strap of her worn backpack as she stepped through the grand revolving doors of the Mitchell Grand Hotel. The air inside was heavy with the scent of fresh flowers and polished wood, mingling with the low hum of classical music that floated from the distant grand piano. Crystal chandeliers hung like sparkling jewels from the soaring ceiling, casting golden light that danced across the marble floors. Well-dressed guests mingled quietly their laughter and hushed conversations, creating an atmosphere of refined elegance that seemed worlds away from the life Emily knew. At 34, Emily was a simple woman dedicated to her work as a community art teacher. Her hands bore the faint stains of paint from a day spent helping children express themselves through color and texture. Her jeans were faded and frayed at the knees, her gray t-shirt dotted with tiny splashes of blue and red. A worn denim jacket hung loosely over her slender frame, and a faded black trucker cap shielded her brown ponytail from view. She moved through the lobby quietly, her gaze steady but tired, carrying the weight of a day spent in service of others. She had never cared much for luxury or appearances. Her world was one of genuine connection, of sharing stories through brushstrokes, of witnessing small triumphs in a child's eyes. But now, here she was walking into a realm where appearances ruled, where every detail mattered, and where she felt like a shadow cast against the brilliance around her. Only 30 minutes earlier, Emily had spoken briefly with her husband, Robert Harper, the billionaire founder of Mitchell Luxury Properties. Their 5-year marriage had always been unconventional. He respected her independence and the passion she poured into her work. She never wanted to be a trophy wife, and he never asked her to be. When Robert suggested she stay at the hotel instead of making the long drive home after her tiring day, it seemed a simple kindness. "I'll let them know you're coming," he had said, his voice warm and steady, filled with the quiet love that had drawn them together despite their different worlds. But now, standing before the gleaming reception desk, Emily felt the distance between those worlds more sharply than ever. The two receptionists, Bradley and Emma, stood poised in perfectly tailored uniforms, their smiles practiced and professional. Yet, as Emily approached, their eyes flickered with something else: skepticism, perhaps even disdain. Her casual clothes, the smudges of paint on her skin, the backpack slung over one shoulder, none of it fit the image of the kind of guest they expected to welcome here. "Good evening," Emily said softly, offering a tired smile. "I'm Emily Harper. My husband should have called ahead about a room for me." Bradley's eyes swept over her from head to toe, lingering on the cap pulled low over her forehead on the paint stains that no amount of scrubbing would erase tonight. His smile tightened just barely perceptible, as if he were trying to mask an unspoken judgment. "Do you have identification, ma'am?" His tone was polite, but carried an edge of doubt. Emily reached into her backpack and pulled out her worn leather wallet. She showed her driver's license, Emily Harper. She confirmed, her voice steady but quiet. Bradley took the license and examined it with exaggerated care, then glanced at Emma, who raised an eyebrow, her expression unreadable. "And you say Mr. Harper arranged a room for you?" he asked, his voice lowering just enough for nearby guests to hear. "Yes, just a few minutes ago," Emily replied. "Robert Harper owns this hotel." A faint murmur stirred among the guests waiting nearby, some casting curious glances in her direction. The man's skepticism didn't waver. Mrs. Harper is a former model, a philanthropist, and a frequent attendee of gala events. He said, his tone almost mocking. She wouldn't be arriving dressed like this. Emily felt a flush creep up her neck, but she held her ground. It wasn't about the clothes, it was about respect. "I am Emily Harper," she said firmly, "and I work with children who don't have a voice. My clothes don't define me." But the receptionists exchanged a look, one filled with disbelief and condescension. Emma stepped closer, her voice low but sharp enough to be heard by several guests. "Perhaps another hotel would be more suited to your circumstances." Emily's heart tightened, but she didn't back down. Round her, a crowd was gathering, some guests whispering, others watching silently. She was not just fighting for herself now, but for every person who had ever been dismissed because they didn't fit a certain mold. As Bradley typed on the computer with deliberate slowness, Emily asked quietly, "Can you please call my husband to confirm?" Emma laughed lightly. "Mr. Harper is one of the wealthiest businessmen in the country. We don't simply call him because someone with a trucker hat claims to be his wife." Emily took a deep breath. "Then call your manager." Bradley shrugged, unmoved. "That won't be necessary. We're busy with guests who actually belong here." Her cheeks burning, Emily felt the weight of the stairs. The silence in the lobby was heavy, broken only by the faint strains of music and whispered conversations. She stood there, a simple woman in paint-stained jeans, facing an invisible barrier constructed by prejudice and pride. Yet, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the sting of humiliation, a quiet resolve began to form. She would not be pushed aside. Not here, not now. Because dignity isn't something you wear, it's something you carry within. The air in the lobby grew thick with tension as Emily stood her ground, surrounded by the polished marble floors and the glittering chandeliers that seemed to mock her quiet defiance. The crowd that had been quietly observing the exchange now whispered amongst themselves, some with sympathy, others with skepticism. The two receptionists, Bradley and Emma, exchanged subtle glances, their faces tight with a mixture of discomfort and stubborn resolve. Emily's voice remained calm but firm. "I am Emily Harper. My husband, Robert Harper, owns this hotel. I have every right to be here." Her words hung in the air, clear and unwavering despite the swirling doubts around her. Bradley's eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Harper, this is a 5-star luxury hotel. People come here expecting a certain standard, not just in service but in appearance and demeanor. Your presence here has caused quite a stir among our guests." His tone was cold, as if implying that Emily's simple appearance was a disruption to the hotel's refined environment. Emma stepped forward, her voice smooth but laced with disdain. "We don't serve the poor. This isn't the place for someone like you." The words echoed sharply through the lobby, silencing the murmurs and sending a shockwave through the crowd. A few gasps escaped from some of the onlookers, while others simply stared, unsure of how to react. Emily's cheeks flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and anger, but she refused to let the words break her spirit. She looked directly at Emma and said, "It's not about what I wear or where I come from. It's about respect. And respect is something every person deserves, regardless of their clothes or their bank account." The security guard, a tall man with a stern expression and a badge that read, Frank, approached cautiously. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he said politely but firmly. "You're causing a disturbance." Emily's heart pounded, but she stayed composed. "I'm not causing a disturbance. I'm simply asking for the respect due to me as the wife of the owner of this hotel." She glanced around at the guests, some of whom were now recording the scene on their phones, their faces a mixture of sympathy and surprise. Frank hesitated, then reached out to gently take Emily's arm. She pulled away quickly, her voice rising slightly. "Don't touch me." Suddenly, the grand revolving doors at the entrance spun open and a tall figure stepped inside. Robert Harper. His presence commanded the room instantly. With salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes, and an air of calm authority, he surveyed the scene before him, his wife Emily standing resolute, the security guard holding her arm, the crowd watching in stunned silence. Robert's gaze met Emily's, and she gave him a small, tired smile, a silent plea for support and understanding. Without hesitation, Robert approached the group, his voice low but firm. "Is there a problem here?" Frank's grip loosened instantly, his eyes wide with recognition. "Mr. Harper, sir, I was just following protocol." He released Emily's arm completely. Robert nodded toward Emily. "This is my wife. I suggest you let her be." The staff at the reception desk, Bradley and Emma, looked visibly shaken. Bradley stammered, "Sir, we didn't recognize Mrs. Harper. There was no reservation under her name." His voice betrayed his embarrassment and regret. Robert's eyes narrowed slightly and his tone sharpened. "No reservation. You expect the wife of the owner to have a reservation?" His gaze swept over the room, locking eyes with the gathered guests. "This isn't just about a reservation or protocol. It's about how we treat people, how we recognize their worth beyond appearances." Emily took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Robert has taught me that dignity isn't tied to the clothes we wear or the status we hold. It's in how we treat one another. I work with children who have been overlooked and judged their entire lives. If I can teach them to see their own worth, then surely the staff here can learn to see the worth in every guest." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd, and a woman in an elegant dress approached, her eyes filled with remorse. "Mrs. Harper, I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner," she said softly. "It wasn't right." Robert nodded appreciatively. Turning back to the staff, he said, "Bradley, Emma, Frank, my office now." The three employees exchanged uncertain glances but followed him without protest. As they walked away, Robert addressed the lobby. Mitchell Grand was founded on the principle of exceptional service for every guest, not just those who fit a certain image. His voice carried across the room, touching each person present. Let today be a lesson, one that reminds us all to look beyond appearances and treat everyone with the dignity they deserve. Emily watched him, her heart swelling with quiet pride and hope. Despite the humiliation she'd faced, this moment was a turning point not just for her, but for everyone who had witnessed it. Sometimes standing firm in the face of injustice was the first step toward true change. Robert Harper's footsteps echoed firmly as he led Bradley, Emma, and Frank through the private corridors of the Mitchell Grand Hotel. The atmosphere shifted immediately. The polished grandeur of the public spaces gave way to a quiet tension, as if the walls themselves awaited the reckoning that was about to unfold. In his spacious, glass-walled office overlooking the city skyline, Robert closed the door behind them. The three employees stood rigid, their professional composure noticeably cracked after the public confrontation. Emily, sitting quietly to the side, removed her cap and rested her paint-stained hands on her lap, the exhaustion of the day etched softly across her face. Robert began without anger, his voice calm but resolute. "I founded Mitchell Luxury Properties 15 years ago, starting with a single small motel in Seattle. Back then, I cleaned rooms myself when the staff was short. My parents worked hard. My father is a janitor, my mother juggling 2 jobs as a waitress. This company was built on respect for people regardless of their background." Bradley shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we truly didn't recognize Mrs. Harper. It was an honest mistake. We follow strict protocols to maintain the hotel's image and standards." Robert's gaze didn't waver. "Standards. Let me tell you what standards mean. My wife runs a community art program for children who have been ignored and underestimated their entire lives. While dressed as she was today, she helped a boy who hadn't spoken in months find his voice through painting. That is the standard I hold dear." Emma swallowed hard, her eyes flickering toward Emily, who gave a small, encouraging nod. I understand, sir. We were doing what we believed was right." Robert shook his head slowly. "That is the problem. You were doing what you thought was right, but it came at the cost of dignity. You judged someone by their appearance and dismissed their worth. That is unacceptable in any of my properties." Frank, the security guard, looked down at his shoes. "I was only following orders. Protocol requires me to remove guests causing disturbances." Emily's voice was gentle but clear as she spoke for the first time. Robert, they were doing their jobs as they understood them. The issue isn't just their actions, but the system that taught them to see worth in narrow terms. Robert nodded thoughtfully. Exactly. This is a failure of training culture and awareness. That ends today. Turning back to the 3 employees, he said, "Tomorrow morning I'm calling an emergency meeting of all hotel managers in the Mitchell Group. We will implement a complete overhaul of our training programs focusing specifically on eliminating bias and prejudice in customer service." Bradley looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "Sir, will we be terminated for this?" Robert smiled, slightly a hint of warmth breaking through his stern demeanor. "No, you won't be fired. Instead, you will be the first to undergo the new training. You'll learn firsthand how unconscious bias leads to mistakes like today's. Then, you will help implement the program across all our hotels." Emma blinked, surprised. Why give us that chance, after what we did before? Robert could answer. Emily spoke softly. "Because every person deserves the chance to grow and change, even those who make mistakes. This isn't about punishment, it's about transformation." Robert nodded in agreement. "Starting tomorrow, Bradley, you'll work closely with HR to develop comprehensive anti-bias training. Emma, you'll be temporarily reassigned to our community outreach program. Frank, you will help review and revise all security protocols to ensure they protect guests respectfully." The 3 exchanged glances, the weight of responsibility settling on their shoulders. "One more thing," Robert added. "You will each spend 1 day volunteering at Emily's art program. I want you to see what happens when people are valued for who they are, not what they wear or how much money they have." Bradley's eyes softened. "I never thought about it like that." Emily smiled gently. "Sometimes our worst mistakes become our greatest lessons if we are willing to learn." As the meeting concluded, Robert stepped aside and took Emily's hand. "I'm sorry you had to endure that today," he said quietly. Emily shook her head. "I'm not sorry. It happened to millions who don't have a billionaire husband to make it right, but maybe this time something good will come of it." Robert's eyes glistened with pride. "That's why I married you, your strength to find purpose even in pain." Outside the office window, the city lights twinkled, but inside a new light was kindling, one of hope, awareness, and the promise of change. The internal investigation wasn't just about one incident. It was the first step toward reshaping a culture and restoring the dignity every guest deserved. And Emily knew this was just the beginning. Robert Harper sat across from Bradley, Emma, and Frank in a quiet conference room the next morning. The tension was palpable, but so was a fragile hope, a chance to turn a painful lesson into something meaningful. "Today, you'll begin your first step toward understanding," Robert said evenly. "You're going to volunteer at Emily's community art program. I want you to see the world she lives in, the children she works with, the challenges they face, and the dignity she helps restore." Bradley swallowed hard, glancing at Emma and Frank, who nodded hesitantly. None of them expected this kind of task, but Robert's calm conviction left no room for argument. The following day, the trio arrived at a modest community center nestled in a worn neighborhood far removed from the gleaming marble of the Mitchell Grand. The walls were decorated with colorful paintings, handprints, and hopeful slogans. The scent of fresh paint mingled with the sounds of children laughing and splashing colors across canvases. Emily greeted them warmly, but without pretense. "Welcome," she said, leading them inside. "This is where we give voice to those who have been silenced." Her eyes sparkled with quiet determination despite the weariness of recent days. Bradley's Emma and Frank quickly realized this was no ordinary place. Here, appearances held no power. Children from broken homes, kids with scars invisible to the eye, and those who had been dismissed by society poured their hearts into the art Emily encouraged them to create. The trio watched as a shy boy with trembling hands transformed a blank canvas into a vibrant portrait filled with hope. Emma's eyes welled up. "I never imagined," she whispered. Emily nodded gently. "Most people don't see past the surface, but every one of these children has a story worth hearing. Throughout the day, Bradley, Emma, and Frank participated, passing out brushes, listening to stories, helping with projects. Each moment chipped away at their preconceived notions. The professional facades they wore at the hotel melted in the presence of raw, genuine humanity. Bradley found himself moved by a young girl who described how painting helped her express feelings she couldn't say aloud. Frank was struck by a boy's pride in finishing his first painting after months of silence. Emma quietly wiped tears from her eyes, overwhelmed by the contrast between this world and the one they had deemed unsuitable for Emily. By the time the program ended, the trio's transformation was undeniable. They looked at Emily with newfound respect, seeing her not as a woman out of place, but as a bridge between worlds, one who demanded dignity for all, no matter their station. Later that evening, Robert received a call from Bradley. "Sir, I want to apologize. I see now how wrong we were to judge Mrs. Harper and others based on appearances. I'm ready to help make things right." Robert smiled, relief washing over him. "That's exactly why we do this. Understanding is the first step to change." The next weeks saw the launch of Dignity for All, a training program developed with input from Bradley, Emma, Frank, and Emily herself. It focused on empathy, anti-bias education, and creating a culture of respect. Staff members from all Mitchell hotels began attending sessions, sharing stories, and learning to recognize the unseen struggles behind every guest's face. Emily's art program became a cornerstone of the initiative. Staff volunteered regularly, building genuine connections with the community and gaining insights that textbooks couldn't provide. What began as a punishment for 3 employees evolved into a movement, one that transformed the culture of an entire company. One afternoon, Emily caught Emma setting up a new art display in the hotel's lobby, paintings created by children from the community program. Emma smiled. "This is my way of saying thank you for showing me a different world." Emily reached out and squeezed her hand. "And this is just the beginning." The trap Robert set wasn't about catching them in wrongdoing. It was about opening eyes, breaking down walls, and building bridges. The proof was in the changed hearts and renewed commitment to dignity, reminding everyone that beneath every exterior lies a story waiting to be honored. This was more than a corporate policy, it was a human revolution. And it all started with a simple woman refusing to be defined by the clothes she wore or the assumptions others made. Robert Harper stood at the head of the large conference room, the weight of the moment settling over the gathered hotel managers and senior staff. The room buzzed with quiet whispers, some nervous, others curious, as the most significant meeting in the company's recent history was about to begin. The walls, lined with sleek panels and framed photographs of Mitchell Grand's prestigious events, felt suddenly stark, as if reflecting the stark truths about to be confronted. He cleared his throat, and silence fell. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. We are here because an incident occurred that no one should ever forget, an incident that exposed a deep flaw in how we see and serve our guests." His eyes scanned the room, meeting gaze after gaze. "Yesterday, my wife Emily was denied service at one of our hotels, not because of any mistake, but because of prejudice. Because she did not look like what some expected a guest of this caliber to look like." A murmur rippled through the room. Robert raised his hand to restore order. "This is not a matter of personal failure alone. It is a systemic issue that challenges our very values. We pride ourselves on excellence, but excellence means nothing if it is reserved only for those who fit a certain image." Bradley, seated near the front, shifted uncomfortably but listened intently. Emma and Frank exchanged glances, their faces flushed with shame yet determination. Robert continued, "Effective immediately, we are implementing a zero-tolerance policy toward discrimination of any kind. This includes how we assess guests based on appearance, background, or any preconceived notions. I expect every one of you to lead by example." One manager raised a hand hesitantly. "Sir, how do we ensure that this change is genuine and not just performative? That the biases ingrained in years of tradition don't quietly persist?" Robert nodded, appreciating the question. We will establish comprehensive training programs focused on empathy, cultural awareness, and unconscious bias. I am entrusting Bradley, Emma, and Frank, those who have faced these lessons firsthand, to help develop and lead these programs. The room shifted as the three employees exchanged looks, no longer the perpetrators, but ambassadors of change. Robert's voice softened. Change will be uncomfortable. It will challenge long-held beliefs and habits, but it is necessary. Our reputation depends not just on luxury, but on respect and dignity for all who walk through our doors. The meeting lasted hours, filled with tough questions, honest admissions, and commitments. Some staff expressed fears about losing the exclusivity of the brand, while others embraced the opportunity to grow. Outside the conference room, word of the meeting spread quickly among the hotel staff and the broader hospitality community. Emily's story became a beacon, sparking conversations about fairness, inclusion, and the true meaning of service. A respected hospitality journal published a feature on Mitchell Grand's bold step, praising its leadership for confronting uncomfortable truths. Within the hotel, the cultural shift began to take root. Training sessions were held regularly, featuring real stories from Emily's art program and testimonials from guests who had once felt unseen. Guests noticed the difference. Genuine warmth replaced cold professionalism, and the hotel's atmosphere became one of welcoming rather than exclusion. One evening, a longtime guest approached Robert. "I've stayed in luxury hotels around the world, but none have felt as human as this place does now." Robert smiled quietly. "That is the standard we want to uphold, not just luxury, but humanity." Emily, watching from afar, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The battle had been hard, but the victory was real not only for her, but for countless others who deserved to be seen and valued. The public confrontation was more than a meeting. It was a declaration that dignity would no longer be optional in Mitchell Grand's halls. It was a promise that the simple woman who once faced rejection would help build a legacy of respect, empathy, and true luxury for all. Months passed since the pivotal meeting that shook the very foundation of Mitchell Grand Hotel's culture. The sweeping reforms Robert Harper had championed began to take root, transforming more than just company policies. They changed hearts and minds. Emily Harper often found herself walking through the hotel's gleaming lobby no longer as a visitor met with suspicion, but as a symbol of resilience and dignity. The art program she led in the community had become entwined with the hotel's identity, its colorful murals adorning previously sterile walls and reminding guests and staff alike of the power of empathy. Bradley, once the skeptical receptionist, now led Dignity for All workshops across Mitchell luxury properties. His transformation was evident. Not only had his demeanor softened, but his passion for creating an inclusive environment burned brighter than ever. He often recounted his first day volunteering at Emily's community center, sharing stories of children who challenged his assumptions and taught him humility. Emma's reassignment to the community outreach program became her new calling. She developed partnerships with local organizations, bringing disadvantaged youth into hospitality internships. Her growth was not without struggle, but each success reinforced the value of the reforms. Emma's eyes sparkled with purpose, far removed from the disdain she once carried. Frank, the security guard who had initially followed protocol without question, now trained new security staff personally. His lessons extended beyond safety procedures to include respect communication and understanding the dignity inherent in every guest. His presence at the hotel was no longer just protective, but reassuring. Guest satisfaction ratings soared. The hotel's reputation blossomed from one known solely for luxury to one celebrated for warmth and genuine care. New guests often commented on the welcoming atmosphere and the authentic smiles greeting them at every turn. Robert and Emily shared quiet moments reflecting on the journey. Sometimes, Robert said one evening as they watched the city lights from their home, the hardest battles lead to the most meaningful victories. Emily smiled. It wasn't just about the hotel. It was about standing for something bigger, about showing that dignity isn't earned by clothes or status, it's a right. Their partnership, both personal and professional, had become a testament to that belief. Together, they continued to nurture the values that had sparked change from the Community Arts Center to the corporate boardroom. A new plaque was unveiled in the hotel lobby inscribed with the words, "At Mitchell Luxury Properties, true luxury is treating every person with dignity and respect. We judge not by appearance but by the worth within." Visitors paused to read it, many moved by its simple yet powerful message. Mrs. Pembroke, the guest who once hesitated to intervene, now volunteered regularly at Emily's program, her granddaughter flourishing under Emily's guidance. The story of Emily Harper, the simple woman once denied and humiliated, became a beacon of hope. It inspired employees, guests, and the wider community to look beyond the surface and embrace the humanity in everyone. This resolution was not a grand finale, but the start of an ongoing commitment, a promise that change once sparked would continue to grow, ripple outward, and reshape the world, one act of dignity at a time. As the soft glow of evening settled over the city, Emily Harper sat quietly in her art studio, surrounded by canvases painted with stories of hope, struggle, and resilience. The room was filled with the gentle scent of acrylics and turpentine, a comforting reminder of the world she had chosen to embrace far from the polished halls of the Mitchell Grand Hotel. Yet, despite the distance, her heart remained deeply connected to both worlds. Looking back on the days when she was denied entry to the hotel she helped inspire, Emily felt a mix of emotions, pain, frustration, but above all, strength. She had been judged not for who she was, but for how she appeared, a simple woman in paint-stained jeans and a trucker cap. Yet that moment of rejection had become a turning point not just for her, but for an entire company, a community, and she hoped a culture. Her husband, Robert, had stood beside her with quiet resolve, transforming his empire from the inside out. Together, they had shown that dignity is not granted by wealth or status, but is a fundamental right of every person. Emily's work with children, once unseen by the luxury world, became the catalyst for a powerful change that echoed far beyond the hotel's marble walls. "I never wanted revenge," she whispered softly. "Only respect for myself, for the children I serve, and for anyone who has ever been made to feel invisible." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, not from sorrow but from the deep well of hope that had blossomed from the struggle. Turning to the camera, her voice steady and warm, Emily asked, "Have you ever been judged unfairly? Made to feel less because of your appearance, your background, or your story? I want you to know this: your worth is not defined by what others see. It lives inside you in your strength, your kindness, and your truth." She paused, a gentle smile spreading across her face. "If my story resonates with you, please share your experience in the comments below. Your voice matters. It might just be the light someone else needs in a dark moment." Emily's gaze softened as she continued. "We all have the power to change the world around us. Sometimes it starts with standing up quietly, refusing to be defined by others, and demanding the dignity we all deserve." The screen gently faded to a message. "True worth is not measured by appearance, but by how we treat each other. Thank you for watching," Emily said softly. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to hear more stories that touch the heart and inspire change. Together, we can create a world where everyone is seen, heard, and valued. As the video ended, viewers were left with a lingering sense of hope, a reminder that even the simplest among us can spark extraordinary transformation through courage, compassion, and unwavering dignity.